Let's talk to you out there, the world-changing human being. And whether you consider yourself a world changer, a influencer, a leader, etc., just know that if you're being and becoming your greatest possible self, your voice, your actions, your message, your purpose, one, you're already living your purpose, and two, it makes a difference. Whether it's one person's life that you're really making a difference in, or many, hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, millions, whatever the number is, you make a difference. So I really want to acknowledge you for that, number one. Number two, I want to support you however I possibly can. So if that's number one, coming on the 12-hour marathon as a special guest, if you want to find out more about that, I'm going to tell you how you can do that in just a second, getting in contact with me. Number two, if you want to create your own platform, launch your own message out into the world, launch your own podcast, I love helping our clients do that. One of my favorite things to do. We have a quarterly mastermind where we help people launch their podcast in 90 days or less. So that's a blast. The next one starts in a couple weeks, July, third week of July, depending on when this podcast comes out. It might be like this week. So if you want to launch your podcast, contact me. And then lastly, if there's anything else I can do to support you, encouragement, coaching, clarity, you just want to become your greatest possible self, I'm here for you. So send me a message, get in contact, okay? Raise your hand, say, I'm ready to become my greatest possible self even more. I just want to know that you're out there, and I just want to give you some love, okay? Send me an email, chris@beyourgps.com. That's one way. You can contact me on Facebook, facebook.com/th3burns, or you can find me on Instagram as well and direct message me there at IamMillionaireChris. Would love to hear from you and hear what you're up to, what you're creating, and how we can support each other and keep growing into our GPS. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Next up is the iTunes review of the week. This week it's by Feminine One, and Feminine One says, Chris Burns' podcast is filled with knowledgeable speakers and thought leaders. Love it. Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate you giving us that feedback. What you love the most, these speakers and thought leaders. I agree. We got the best people on here to empower you, to help you become your GPS. So make sure you stay tuned. Number one, subscribe on iTunes. Keep getting all these latest updates, episodes, new content that we're putting out. We release a new episode every day, so you don't want to miss any of that gold. Any of the gold, the one interview, the one piece of information that could really make a difference in your life to help you transform, transcend, and truly own your greatest possible self. So that's the first encouragement. The second is, if you want to give us feedback, if you want to let us know how we're doing and help us keep growing the show, go ahead and give us a review as well. Search Becoming Your Greatest Possible Self on iTunes or on the internet, and just let us know. Keep us in the loop, what you really love and what you want to see even more of. Thank you, thank you, thank you in advance for doing it. I appreciate you. I'm going to introduce Jacob in just a second here. Before that, grab a piece of paper, grab a pen, and then throw it to the side because you're probably not going to need it because we're talking about mindfulness and a lot of other really great stuff. No, I'm just kidding. Take notes if that is your jam, if that feels good for you, if that's your flow. And I want you to grow from this experience, from this conversation. And I think a lot of the value is going to be experiencing it and being able to open up your perspective, open up your paradigm, because Jacob has a lot of life experience to come from, and he's helping people in a big, big way. So make sure you stay tuned all the way through till the end of the interview, because it feels good to complete what you start. It feels good to finish. It feels good to have integrity. It feels good to be someone who sticks it through 110%. Go the extra mile. I believe in you. Let's introduce Jacob, and then we'll bring him on the screen. Jacob Cooper is a world-renowned public speaker on higher consciousness and the true nature of our being. Through his profound near-death experience, he empowers others through educating and answering the mystery about life on the other side of the veil and the eternal nature of consciousness. He provides individual sessions in his private office and workshops. Jacob is a licensed social worker, certified Reiki master, certified hypnotherapist with a specialization in past life regression therapy. He additionally facilitates meditation sessions and workshops throughout the country. And he's currently writing his own book that entails his own profound experiences that can inspire and enlighten others to live their truth and expand on their connection to higher consciousness in their everyday lives. And we are blessed to have Jacob here with us today. Jacob, are you ready to rock the house, my man?
I am ready. Thank you, Chris. I am ready. Thank you. Thank
Awesome.
you.
Awesome,
It's an
man. I
honor to be
appreciate
on
you.
your program.
Yes, yes, I love it. I love it, dude. We've been wanting to get you onto this show and do an amazing interview with you for a while now. So I'm super grateful that we finally made it happen. We've been growing together for a number of years as well, and just keeping in touch. So I'm grateful for staying in touch with you, for continuing to grow our relationship and check in and support each other throughout the years, man. I appreciate you, and I just love seeing you grow and all that you're up to, man.
Right back at you, brother. I'm so proud of all your progress and your growth and your brother. And, it's an honor to be on your program. Keep up your great work. Yes.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Jacob. So we are going to dive right into the theme of the day. Today's theme is, who are the 5 associates who you're around the most? Now, that doesn't necessarily mean who are those 5 people, and I want you to list them. I just want you to think about and contemplate, meditate on what impact do these 5 closest people or 5 associations have on you, and how have you prioritized really doing something about that, choosing wisely who you surround yourself with, whether it's physical people or non-physical entities. I'm sure you can speak to both, but would love to hear what that impact has been on your life, Jacob.
Yeah. For me, I was, I guess I had a double-edged sword type viewpoint towards my own, childhood near-death experience. I mean, what
Mm,
I had at a very young age is what a lot of people train and aspire to and try to give every fiber of their being to experience. And here it was handed at
mm,
me at a young age where I didn't have to work for it. It just, came to me.
mm,
So that experience was pivotal in my worldview. And I don't remember life being normal ever. It was always, a supernatural existence. And, I
mm,
certainly had to suppress a lot of that experience, integrate to fill in. But thank, God, there's been a lot of people in my life who have eased the way and allowed, myself to own, my experience. And every day there are millions of people coming out of the woodworks who have had near death experiences, of out of body experiences, spiritual transformative experiences
mm.
that are really, changing the way that we look at consciousness in this world and in everyday life. And, it's pretty profound. So I'm just very fortunate to be doing this at the right time when consciousness is really expanding and blossoming.
Mm.
Everyone's getting a podcast and very out there. So thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're welcome, man. You're welcome, and I'm proud of you as well for taking that life experience and being willing to share about it, being willing to communicate it with others, so that you can make an even bigger difference. Because a lot of people have those experiences and then they keep them to themselves, selfishly, because it hurts a lot. They're suffering and they don't know how to transmute that pain into making a difference for others, and ultimately truly being grateful for the gifts that they used to think were their greatest chains and their greatest pains. So I appreciate you transmuting all that experience and rising above it and surrounding yourself with amazing people who can help you do that even more, man.
Oh, absolutely. From a very young age, I was always an athlete. And,
Mm.
there was one man who I met at a young age who really was pivotal in my life. He was actually the meditation coach for the Bulls and the Lakers. And he
Wow.
brought mindfulness to Michael Jordan and Kobe and Shaq. And so from a very young age, it's almost as if the universe has, planted a lot of these people to allow myself to take ownership of this, spiritual stuff and understanding that it could be implemented in almost everyday moment.
Yeah.
Um, you know, I think a lot of people practice certain activities,
Yeah.
but spiritual practice is something that you implement in every day of life, and it's
Mm.
just transforming this mundane to a sacred journey. But that individual that I met at a very young age as a family friend,
Wow.
was a pivotal, expedited individual in my life that allowed me to take a lot more ownership of my work and understanding different tools to, expedite change and success.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
so,
Dude, I
yeah.
love it. I love it, Jacob. It's super powerful. And for anyone who's just connecting with you, I mentioned your intro in the beginning, like your bio and kind of the formal process of sharing that. But I'd love for you to share in your own words what you stand for and how you serve your clients today.
For me, I come from a family of about two or three psychotherapists, and so
Mm.
I was born, to give. My name is Cooper, which translates to barrel maker. But my family, we oftentimes carry people in barrels, and if you can't walk, we kind of let your hand to allow people to stand and stuff like that. But the family that I was born to was very much into service and
Mm.
giving over to others, and so naturally, that's what I was born into. And so for me, I was very much devoted to helping people from a ground up foundational perspective. I
Mm.
had a lot of the tools to build other aspects of the home. But for me, I was very driven, in my early teens and 20s to learn foundational exercises on myself and others. And so for me, I work, full time as a psychotherapist in a mental health clinic. I work with clients. You got a brain, you got a body. I could try to work with you, but within the clinic, I'm able to not only see individual clients, but I run 3 mindfulness meditation groups a week. And so what I stand for is trying to increase accessibility to some of these tools because, I think the playing field needs to be evened out with certain socioeconomical populations who may not know about this stuff or not privy to the information, and so that they can have more tools because they need it just as much as the next. And so, I think increasing accessibility to all populations is important to me. And I was
Mm.
able to do that. And privately, I have a private practice for hypnosis. I work, mainly, in the realm of past life regressions, but I also do hypnosis for weight loss, hypnosis for academic success, cigarette cessation, confidence boosting. So I do have private clientele through phone sessions or in the confines and comforts of my own home office. And I do, energy work, and Reiki. If you're not familiar with Reiki, I suggest you might Google it, but it's a form of Japanese, healing, that works with the electromagnetic or auric field in the physical body, emotional body,
Mm.
spiritual body of a person in a non-invasive and comforting way. And, I also do a lot of talks, like we said, about my own near-death experience and entails on life on the other side of the veil. And I run, a lot of, mindfulness programs on a pro bono basis or
Mm.
paid basis. I work very closely with breast cancer patients on integration of mindfulness. That, cancer patients to me is a population that I'm called to do. And I think mindfulness works very well with that sect. But I work in a lot of, there's many paths up to the mountain. It's a similar light.
Yeah.
And so I know you understand, we speak a similar language. I work on many different levels of the home, so that hopefully people are able to embody and enjoy, their own dwelling place, and embrace it a little bit more.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
100%. I love it. Jacob, you are a man of many talents and serving a lot of different people, and I love it. I really, really appreciate you. Also, standing up for the people who are less fortunate, who may not have access or awareness to this information and to these resources that could really make a difference for them. I know that my dad had colon cancer. I think it was last year, and he hasn't practiced meditation. He doesn't know about alkalizing his body. He doesn't know about the stress and stuff like that that's created from lifestyle choices and things like that. So it's like, man, if only he knew. If only these people who didn't know knew. And you and I were also on our own journey of consciousness and expanding that and becoming more aware of what makes the difference for us and evolving and making a bigger impact. So, I just really appreciate what you do and the work that you do in the world. And I also want to go back to your journey and talk about going to the other side of the veil, so to speak, and what that event was like and what the journey's been like for you, man.
Yeah, I know you mentioned I'm working on a book, and so it's hard to get into the full entail of the experience. But for viewers out there who are unfamiliar, with my story or my book that's in the works, at 3 years old, I suffered from something called whooping cough,
Mm.
which could be deadly if untreated. And so I had this endless cough, and it wasn't treated for a vaccine to prevent it. And
Mm.
3 years old, I suffocated, and all aspects of my physical body began shutting down, one step at a time. And slowly but surely, I actually suffocated.
Mm.
And once I suffocated, my brain, snapped in half. and almost as if you take a plug in a wall and yank it out. And so that's when I was able to get out of my body and into the infinite consciousness, in which I encountered all celestial beings on the other side. I had a very heightened awareness, of this world, the material world, and that world, the spirit realm. So I was able to really understand the two parallels and the two worlds, at the same time, and I was able to encounter what's called spiritual guides, who are beings that you're incarnated, before you're incarnated with, who are involved in the charting process and are there with you and guiding you and trying to, get you to your highest and greatest good. Kind of like 24/7 hour counselors with you, working with you, and they know that there's transparency over there. You can't hide from who you are and what you think. But I was also able to experience what's called a life review, which is every thought, deed, action that I've done, not only in this carnation, but it's mostly the impact that it has on another. And even at a young age, I was able to feel that impact. And I was also able to recall past lives, and I was able to tune into my own spiritual, family on the other side, or soul group, as you would call it. And I was able to see my life's mission, which was, providing a lot of healing and closure to people who might have questions as continuity of consciousness past the body, and people who are fearful of death. And so my moment in my trauma was a sacrifice, in a way, like millions of other near-death experiencers, to allow to be harbingers of good news that there's nothing to fear. Death is merely an awakening. It's an exciting continuation period. But really, heaven is in this moment. I do believe this moment we're able to implement some of that higher consciousness. And so, I was able to see what I would be doing. I had a whole experience of seeing my life unfold in front of my eyes in every moment. And there's two schools of thought within near-death experience. There's one experience where you're forced to stay back. You have karmic work to do and karmic duties, or there's another situation where you decide to choose. So when I was given all those visions, I had the most important pivotal decision to make in a spontaneous moment, because my body was suffocating and I was deprived from oxygen, and so I had to choose quickly. And I made a decision to stay in this life, and I'm very thankful for that. And so I think that my biggest mission is to allow people to re-remember and re-experience who you are, because in this world there's a lot of deprogramming that occurs, and through different institutions, we aren't very much in parallel with who we are, and we forget that. It's kind of Plato said, some people drink more or less from the waters of forgetfulness. A lot of Greek philosophers would talk about near-death experiences, and it's been a lot of celebrities have had it throughout time, but now really it's taken on a whole new form, because with the advancements of science, medicine, that incubation between life and death is really increasing, as well as giving the confidence to have platforms as many people who aren't Woodstock hippies, smoking whatever all day. There's very real professional people who are having these experiences, who are very rational and left brain, and regular people go to their job, go home, go to their grocery store. But they happen to have moments where they are, able to take in off of this, programming that we're all a part of, or as Plato would refer to as the allegory of the cave, where we're kind of shown images of what society wants us to see, and then you escape that and you achieve a level of clarity past what we're portrayed. Yeah.
That's incredible. So I'm curious, because I've never experienced anything like this, which is awesome, because I'm so curious. I'm so like, man, what was it like? What was that experience like? When you went into the spiritual realm, how were you aware of that, and at 3 years old, and how did you bring that awareness back with you into this lifetime, into the 3D realm?
In those moments, I'm a natural skeptic. I was born that way. And so in those moments, I remember pitching myself. I'm like, is this a hallucination?
Yeah.
Am I making this up out of fear? I know there's a large school of thought that says that near-death experiences happen, due to hallucinations and your brain and psyche's desire to protect yourself. For me, my brain was shut down. So at the very least, I should have very limited thought. not, a very profound experience. And it's really the only experience that I remember from my childhood. So the very basis, your cerebral cortex should be able to produce a very limited, type thought. But for me, this was just as real as talking to you.
Mm.
And so in those moments, it was, I guess I'm going to use the term bug out because it was just so much for me to handle.
Yeah.
It's like you take a fish and you just throw it in a pond of water, and it's just like there's a shock, value to it.
Right.
It's a familiar place, granted, but you're used to. Even 3 years, feels like a long time, in some ways that you haven't been there, back to your home. And so for me, there was like a trauma and a shock, and then eventually the particles began to slow down, and the experience began to crystallize to more tangibility and reality, and my own emotions began to settle down, and so it felt very much real. It was happening all in front of me. It wasn't a mental experience. It was a real, experience. And so that side, all it is if you take a radio, dial and just tune up a frequency, it's just another realm. It's just another vibration. And so everything was happening right in front of my eyes. And I can't get into the full extent of it because we could be here for hours on end. And that's a little bit more is in my book, but it's a very real experience. And I don't call it death. I call it a rebirth, a reawakening, and coming a lot more into who you are and the infinite consciousness that we all truly are, that we sometimes forget in this reality, this finite reality. So,
yeah. Powerful, man. It's funny, like as I asked that, Jessica came up with the same question of there's so many people that say those near-death experiences are simply your mind processing what's going on or recalling things you've heard or known. What do you say to that? And so it sounds like the experience was so real for you that you could tell that it wasn't just, hey, I'm recalling what has happened, but like it was so real,
Yeah, it's the only thing as early as I can remember that I could almost recall. But really, I know there's that school of thought that says that, it's a trauma and you're having hallucinations, but really those should be very limited type thoughts. I know for me, my brain was deprived of oxygen. So to have any thought to that extent, how do you explain that? So that's, really tells you that the brain is just a filter of consciousness. It doesn't create consciousness. It just is a temporary storehouse. And for me, once my brain shut down, consciousness continued, and it didn't stop at that moment. I know many other near-death experiences will echo that, but it's very healthy to have skepticism and question, and I certainly entertain it because it allows me to question my experience. That helps to take ownership and to understand this and to make it more tangible in this reality. So skeptics are my friend. I don't shun that. I'm actually very grateful for the scientific community who keeps near-death experiencers honest.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. I heard, I don't know if you've heard of Tom Bilyeu and Impact Theory, but it's a great show, great podcast. And he interviewed a guru. I don't remember his name, but it was a pretty recent episode. And basically he said, whenever you have a belief about something like this is the way it is, you shut down to learning, you shut down to joy, you shut down to possibility and expansiveness, expansion. Consciousness is, in my opinion, super expanding always. Consciousness is always expanding because as soon as you put it in a box and say this is the way it is and this is the truth, like it boxes what's possible, and we're in a reality of infinite possibilities, right? Or in a universe or a multiverse or whatever we want to call it, so many different dimensions where any number of possibilities could exist. What are your thoughts on that?
100%. So many people come up to me as if I'm some pompous guru and I know everything about life after death and the universe. And what else? I'll have to quickly dismiss that claim or that pedestal, because what I'll say is I am just the same as you. I happen to have a profound experience, but that experience was a very limited understanding of reality and all that we are. I am merely just a drop in this giant ocean who understood, where I come from, who understood the ocean. But to say that one being, that I can understand the entirety of the ocean, would be dishonest and not true. And so for me, it allowed more of an openness and more of a thirst for spiritual expansion, and to not be closed off to infinite possibilities. When you think of infinite, you can't divide that. You can't mark that up. And so one experience is an aspect, is a very small aspect of it.
Mm. Wow.
So the all couldn't be the all if that's the case.
I love it. I love it. And that segues right into this conversation about the eternal nature of consciousness. And I'm curious, where did that conversation, that specific way of framing it and phrasing it, and why that pulls to you in your mission, in your soul, where did that come from for you?
Yeah, a lot of people associate the physical body with consciousness, or the brain with consciousness. And so I can understand logically when you see someone in a casket, you would be quite saddened and quite upset, and certainly, grief kicks in. But for me, that's very important because grief is very natural, and we've been programmed to that condition. But my experience was a way to, almost unplug myself from what we've been conditioned to look at the soul and who we are is not, merely made by the body. It's just temporarily stored. And, that we have a rich past, we'll have a rich future. And, death is nothing to fear, but rather embrace. And each moment is a building block in the school of life, in this earth plane that we're a part of to evolve. I know Charles Darwin talks about the physical evolution as a species, but I think from my experience, we're here to learn lessons and grow from an inner perspective, so that our souls could reach higher planes and we could, burn off, karmic ties and previous patterns, so that lessons are no longer needed to be repeated, unless, lessons are embraced really. Messages are no longer need to be repeated. And that goes with past lifetimes, but really, for me, it allowed me to understand from those moments that, when my physical body shut down, that, life goes on. And it's very exciting. It's nothing to be afraid of.
Wow. Yeah. And I think what you said earlier about death is an awakening. I think that's one really great perspective, that it's just a transition. This is just a season of our consciousness. I don't know if that's accurate or effective way of describing it, but there's this journey that we're going on through this body, through this discovery. And I think what you said was healing, healing the karmic wounds, healing the things from the past, so that we can become more whole, more connected to consciousness, infinite consciousness. Because along a certain lifetime, let's say, if we cause a wound in someone else, then we get to heal that in some way in a future lifetime, so that we don't only have the perspective of, man, I wounded this person, or I caused this hurt, or I hurt myself, or whatever it might be, but I have both perspectives, which creates an integration, which creates a wholeness. So there's no longer these segmented parts and segmented lives of a different perspective of consciousness, but it all comes together. Does that make sense to you? Is that something, a way you relate to it?
Oh yeah, and I don't take a religious perspective where what I mean by that, it's material or information is handed to me and I believe in that. For me, all of my truths are based off of firsthand evidential experience that I've had. And so in my near-death experience, what you're saying rings true in the life review that I had, in which I saw every flashing image, but with the feeling of another person, the feeling of what that did to another person. And so when people speak about heaven or hell, a lot of it is just feeling all that you've done, to another. And, whether you left this world in a brighter, better place, or, if you have some loose ends to kind of patch up. So certainly no one's perfect, but we're here to really, take a hard look at some of our actions and finding ways to maximize relationships and taking higher ground, in difficult situations, and learning how to take higher vantage points with the face value, life that comes our way. And to me, that's what spirituality is about. Where the material world coming at you, and that's very raw and all, what we get from the outside, but you have this rich inside that's able to have a higher vantage point and, take off that had of victimization into opportunity of expediting your soul's growth, so to speak.
That's freaking epic. I just love how you explain that. It's so powerful. I've never heard it like that. It's like the vantage point. You get to rise your vantage point. It's not like a frequency, not a vibration, not an energy, although it is that. Like that's not what we're referring to right now. I love how it's more relatable. It's more like from a human being's perspective, how are you going to look at it? Are you going to look at it as the life's coming at you, the circumstance, the event? You're going to blame, judge, resist, try to keep it away, or are you going to go higher and say, man, what's happening with Chris right here and this flat tire he just got? That is nuts, man. Oh my goodness. I wonder what that protected him for in the coming, drive, that he had to turn around and go back to Vegas to repair his tire and spend an extra 3 hours instead of going to San Diego. True story. Oh,
Oh man, self-disclosure. Yeah. Wow.
So it's like, to be able to have that perspective and not get pissed off and angry and be like, why me? But rather say, this happened for a reason. What else can I do in the meantime? How can I turn this into fuel? How can I use this thing that came at me and dance with it? I think, what is it? Not Tai Chi. Jiu-Jitsu. Jiu-Jitsu uses people's momentum and things, and so does, there's another martial arts that does it. It's like a flow. Aikido. Aikido also does that, where you take people's, momentum and force and turn it into what you want it to be. It's also like a dance, like the dance when you're dancing with a partner. You never know specifically what you're going to get unless you two are a choreographed pair. And even that, there's still, variants. There's still, each human gets to show up and express their movements and their own personality and their perfection and their flaws, so to speak, and missteps and all that kind of stuff. So it's just fascinating, man. I love this.
Yeah. It's like Bruce Lee would say, be like water and just flow where, it takes you, kind of.
Yeah, man. That's rad. So you're helping your clients. I want to dive into hypnosis and past life regression, because I think that's something that we don't talk about as much on this 12-hour marathon, which is cool because I love diving into things that are fresh for our audience. Why did you get into that, and why has that been an important part of you providing this service to people?
I think most of us are drawn to this field from, firsthand experience and suffering and going through a difficult time. I mean, certainly, as a young child, having this experiences, I've had a lot of after effects of it, including, enhanced intuitive capabilities, and, my brain was differently shaped, from that experience. And so I was able to, easily access that realm. But as a child, I had a lot of spontaneous past life recollections. And, one time I was even on a pitcher's mound, and I was even having visions of past lives, and the ball of life, so to speak, was in my hands, and the batter was there, and I was just, my body was here, but my consciousness was in some other place. And so for me, I was, I think I'm very inspired, from my own experience. Not to make this about myself, but really, you want to make this world a different place than what you were exposed to, and turning some of those pains and confusing moments of moments of enlightenment and ease for people, and so that they could really own their experiences and expedite their lives. And so for me, I was very much inspired to go over a gift of past life regression, which allows people to understand, not only from an entertainment perspective, that you've been here before and that you've had, many different lives, incarnations, but more importantly, I'm more into moving forward. And so we had this great experience. I'm kind of like you. So what does that mean? It's great. It's kind of like you meditate in the Himalayas. Great. You access Jesus or whatever. Great. What do you do with it? What's the tangible, footwork that you're able to have that leads to results? Because I think, that's the kind of world that we're in. And so for me, everyone talks about soul's purpose and soul's understanding and, your life's purpose. And I think you could provide a lot of clues and insight towards understanding your past, but some of the repetitive patterns that happen within this life, and so that you're able to allow yourselves to, handle experiences from a different way, from being more informed and more aware. So I think we have a lot more tools in this lifetime than I could remember, I guess, in other lifetimes. To really, it almost seems like a cheat. And what is Woody Allen says? I certainly didn't believe in past lives in this life, and I don't believe in past lives in my last one. But anywho, just some comedic stuff. But no, it's great. And so I run groups, I have sessions, but people come for different reasons. But I think if I were to have a goal of it, it would be to allow to take yourselves this information to explain family dynamics, health related issues, or it could be explained from past life, regression, in
Yeah.
hypnosis, life path themes, life purpose, a lot of who you are and your many gifts and where you've come from could be explained.
Mm.
Interpersonal dynamics could be explained. So wear many hats, many different lives, but similar messages. Until they're embraced and implemented in your life.
Yeah.
So it's interesting.
I think that's a critical part of it. A lot of people might hear spiritual wisdom, might get intuitional nudges, might like receive guidance from the universe, from people in their environment, from their guides, whatever it might be, and it's about what they do with it. So is there any recommendations you would give on how to integrate that more effectively, how to learn the lesson, how to really embody that spiritual lesson even more?
And forgive me, this is regarding higher spiritual truths or past life awareness and stuff like that. You know, I don't want to sound too new agey or too repetitive, but it's very simple. I think from my own near death experience, I understood the brain as the most important ally between the two worlds. And so the more relaxed the brain is, and for my case, my brain shut down, I was able to totally be in that world. But for me, the more that the brain is relaxed, the more that it could be a cleaner filter, between the two worlds. And a lot of people become so left-brained that their lives become very much, left brain represents the analytical side, becomes very dry. They criticize everything. It could drive you nuts. And the inverse of that, a lot of people become right-brained and very creative, and that's good. But it's very hard, to do well without that middle ground. And so when you think of song, right? Song has lyric, which is represented by the left brain, and it has a harmony by the right brain. And so when the two are infused together, you're able to really recite and state your song, which really why we're all here. You don't want to die when the music is still kind of in you. You want to express your song. So meditation is the quickest way to access your deeper soul's connection, and really allow yourself to quiet your mind, to really reflect on who you are, but it could also allow you to expand yourself, expand your horizons, and really allow a lot more of who you are to crystallize to the surface. I think so many of people are disempowered, because when you think about it from day one, we're almost programmed as if we're a blank canvas. And people, when we do well in a test, it's pass fail. We do well at home, good, bad. And so our condition with who we are is based off of how the outside world, depicts us. And so we have a very limited, vantage point of who we are, within our programming. And meditation allows us to be a little bit more deprogrammed to get to the core truth, almost kind of like the fire away, burn away approach, no pun intended.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. Also, I wanted to ask you about being mindful and meditating. And you mentioned when you shut down the brain activity, when that goes to a minimum, you're able to connect to your deeper truths, the deepest parts of you that's able to crystallize. You're able to like really get more in touch with that, in tune with that, aware of that. Why does that work? How does that work when you stop your thinking and stop your brain? Like these deeper truths come to the surface.
Yeah, you're making me dig here. I like it. Thank you. Obviously we have four major brain waves: the alpha, beta, theta, and delta. And so, meditation is usually associated with allowing yourself to get into the first and second major brain wave. The third and fourth are really more sedative type. But really, the brain, to me is a lot of where our consciousness lies. A lot of our thoughts lies. It's funny that you say this. As a young kid, I was in my kindergarten class, and I saw myself that I was existing in my thought. I was existing in my brain, and I felt very much disconnected. The head and the heart are a couple inches apart, but they're universes apart for some people. And that's where the disconnect lies. And so, I don't think it's necessarily shutting down the brain, but having the brain, the mind, the body, and the spirit all infused, so that there's a mind-body, parallel relationship. Really, ideally, you should be existing, in your gut, which is your core, it's your essence. English language on a subconscious basis will say, speak from your gut, speak from your core. Why do we speak like this? Or that our brain is on fire, or our head is on fire, rather, have too many thoughts, or we're cool-headed. And so we use a lot of the spiritual elements to describe our certain physiological conditions. We don't even notice it that we're speaking higher spiritual truths of the earth, air, fire, water, ether, dichotomy. But what the point where I'm trying to get at is, it's not to say to shut down the brain. The brain is going to do what it's going to do,
Right.
but allow yourself to get more into the body, to be in
Mm.
tune with your heart, with your gut, where you're holding stress, and kind of having like a good biofeedback, type understanding of, as we all know, stress is very much created with the communication between the mind and the body, the most important communication line that you can have. So
Wow.
I wouldn't say necessarily it's about shutting down the brain. It's really about getting in tune with
Mm.
your, which is
Yeah,
a lot.
I think the heart math calls it coherence. When your brain is in coherence with your heart, and I guess even better is when it's in coherence with your gut, and your entire body, your entire being is like in the same wavelength, so that like you're totally aligned. And it's like when you're that way, then if you're living from your core, that's your essence, that's who you are, like your deepest, most purest, I think, loving and abundant and prosperous and powerful and greatest possible self would come from the core, not necessarily your head of comparing and contrasting and deleting, distorting, generalizing, as NLP talks about. Like your head's just trying to, fit everything that's going on in this world, in what you perceive to be the world, how you understand and know the world, try to process that. But if you get your gut and your heart and your head in alignment, then it's not so much as important as what's going on in this physical world, but it's about who you're being from the inside, how you're feeling, what you want to resonate, what you want to radiate. And then I think once you're aligned with that, then you can choose to shift, and it's like your whole ship will be able to shift, change direction, because you choose, hey, I was in scarcity in my head, I was in wanting to be in abundance in my heart, and then in my core I was fighting for survival, and now boom, I'm all aligned. Let's go on the ship towards prosperity, or whatever it might be. I'm curious, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, Harvard studies has now proven that so many people are about, 40%, 40 to 50% of their lives, placed in a moment of disconnect or
Mm.
obsessive thought or rumination. So
Wow.
when you think about it, to live your most impactful lives, that means that the majority of us are not in this moment, are not in our body,
Mm.
are not connected between our mind, body, spirit, and we're, in places of, the past worrying about, sadness, and the future worrying about, future, which causes anxiety, as Lao Tzu would say. And so, being in this moment, allows us to be flow ready, to
Mm.
so that we are able to handle, life, without as much editing and processing, and so we're able to be more in flow. And I know I spoke about my friend George Mumford, who's a good friend of mine, good family friend. And regarding meditation and mindfulness, a lot of people just thought of it as a way to escape. But what I like about mindfulness, it's geared, towards success. It's geared towards, reaching your highest, greatest self.
Yeah.
It really allows you to tune in, almost like a great guitar player, looks at the strings and tunes in those strings so that your pitch could be as great as you can. So many people are just playing their guitar with broken strings, and they're wondering why they're frustrated or burnt out, and just saying, why can't I be more? Well,
Wow.
I got to tune it in. But George was great in working with the Chicago Bulls players, because he
Amazing.
allowed them to be more in flow. And athletes, when you're in flow, all of your capabilities, as you said, that mind, body, spirit, is able to be put out there. But when you're in analysis, when you're editing, when you're thinking about the fans, you're here and your body's over here. So it's very hard for you to hit that jump shot. It's very hard for you to stay, in the moment and in flow with your surroundings, and having a heightened sense of interconnectedness of the game.
Yeah.
So it could be implemented in sports, performing, academics, whatever you want, business. It's a wonderful tool, and I'm glad it's getting a lot more respect than what it used to. It's really gaining a whole new form. This whole movement, so it's great.
Wow. That's beautiful. So, what are you most excited about seeing mindfulness become more accessible to people, and seeing it make a bigger difference in people's lives?
Yeah, I think my whole goal is to really allow an equal playing field, as I said before, for
Mm.
all this information. And so I want people to really, for me, this whole experience is a countercultural practice, because we're kind of taught that life is based off of how we experience, and what we're kind of handed down, rather than being empowered with what your truth is and what you experience. And so
Yeah.
I think it allows a lot more people to have a more intimate connection with themselves, to befriend elements and aspects of themselves that they may not like. And this really is the greatest tool towards change and really allowing people to be the greatest possible self. If you ask me.
Yeah, I
it's,
love it.
it's great.
I
Yeah.
love it. I love it. I see that you are exploring a lot of different mediums to be able to serve people, right? Whether it's public speaking, whether it's hypnosis, whether it is, just teaching people meditation. Like there's all these different mediums. Do you have a favorite that you love doing the most, or a type of serving people, or a gift that lights you up the most?
Yeah, every time I get up there, it's kind of like a cup of espresso with either a client or a group, whatever have you. It's just kind of different, But for me, I'm called to the person who, you know, is doesn't like where they are, is
Mm,
uncomfortable where they are, has some questions, is questioning a bit of reality,
yeah,
and is looking for some answers. The ones with the arms crossed, are also good to talk to, but it requires the fact that you're planting a seed, you hold no responsibility for where it goes. And if they
right.
want to resist, it might persist. But usually the people with the open minds, open hearts, are the easiest to get through.
Yeah,
Um,
the image that popped up in my mind since you mentioned seed is like someone who's in a seed might not even be ready to break through. Someone who's in a, let's say, who's still a caterpillar, still asleep, quote unquote, but still like it's wondering about the cocoon, or maybe it just jumped into the cocoon. It's like, how am I going to get to a butterfly? But the seed is like, maybe the seed hasn't even broken through to start sprouting yet. You are still there to serve those people. If the seed person comes, they say they want help, but they're a little skeptical, they're a little closed off to the possibility, to the transformation, you're still there for them. And it sounds like the people who are like breaking through their shell, and they're like, Jacob, what's out there? Show me, tell me, how do I grow, how do I be my best self? You're like, all right, let's put some fertilizer on this thing.
yeah, yeah. And, I never take any credit for any,
Mm,
that's just, my truth again. I don't take credit. All I do is I'm just, delivering information.
mm,
And what people do is that they're able to take that information, and challenge their everyday reality, and
mm,
question what they have. And for me, my experience allowed me to understand that to be able to find yourself, you have to be willing to lose yourself, so to speak. And that's a
yeah,
very vulnerable place.
yeah,
And so for me, once I suffocated, all that I knew was taken from me. And I was never able to look at life in the same way. And so, this practice, I know it's easy off the tongue, it's very easy to speak about, but difficult to stomach and to implement, and so I think it really requires a very devoted, resilient, and
mm,
strong person to take this in. But there's many rungs and many levels of this.
yeah,
Everyone's on a different evolutionary, pattern, whether that they're a younger spirit, older spirit, middle soul, whatever have you. And so
mm.
everyone's at a different level, much as you've got post grads, graduates, elementary school, but one step at a time for everyone. That's
Yeah,
my
I love
philosophy.
it, and I love what you said there about you. You have to be willing to lose yourself to be able to find yourself. I
That's
think
right.
that's something a lot of people are afraid of, is losing themselves, and especially I think we're in a society and a culture where if we lose ourselves, we're like seen as crazy or weird or something like that. That I think a lot of people are afraid to let go to that level, or that something like that might happen, and there would be irreparable damage to themselves, to them, to their life, to their family, to their whatever is going on with them. I'm curious how you encourage people to do that, and still how do you encourage people to do that, and at what level? And I'm sure everyone's different, but would love to hear your guidance on that.
Yeah. I mean, outside of listening to Marshall Mathers or Eminem and his song "Lose Yourself" and having that post-hypnotic suggestion, um, I'm glad with the work that he did. He really gave that statement a lot more tangibility and gave it a bit of a hip and a pep to the step. But
Yeah.
um, you know, I I think it's one step at a time. A
Mm,
lot of people ask me, I didn't have a near-death experience. You have a vantage point. How do I get that clarity? How do I have what
mm,
you have? And the only way to allow this is to be on the field. If you're on the
yeah.
field, if you're aware, if you're questioning yourself, and if you have an open mind and an open heart,
Mm,
you'll recognize that life will come differently to you.
mm,
I think also the bigger element is understanding that that is nothing outside of yourself. I mean, my experience wasn't outside of myself. it's the deepest core to who I am and what I'm connected to. And so I think for people, it's recognizing that you're already there. You just have to peel off some of the layers, and within time, you come back to your core. But it's nothing that we don't have. My experience is nothing that anyone doesn't have. I just happen to, I guess, remember it. But at the core, it's who we are and what we're all connected to as infinite, spiritual beings. Truly, that's a phyla. That's who we are. But I would say, there's different modalities. I know you mentioned martial arts. As a very young age, I was very much, tuned in and practiced heavily martial arts. I was a brown belt in a Japanese practice called Shotokan, which from a young age gave me a good, mind-body, type practice. Yoga is fantastic for mind-body connection, really allowing yourself to open yourself up. Tai Chi, great. Even if it's just taking a walk and being mindful. So many people are so focused on having these out of body experiences or, accessing the silver cords or all this stuff. But if you can't embrace, the hummingbird in the air or the blue sky, right above you or this planet, it's going to be very hard, to embrace the other stuff. So, it's an evolution. It's part of embracing yourself and all that you're connected to.
That's beautiful. Beautiful. And I hear being in wonder and like recognizing the miracle of life, of reality, like just totally, it's almost like, I don't want to say spacing out, but like just how can you expand that moment? How can you expand into the infiniteness of that moment? How can you make it even more beautiful, like appreciate it even more and like really dive into it? That's what I hear that I could expand into as someone who wants to like amplify my life and my experience in life. How do I take each moment and just like bask in it and just embody it?
Well, look, if you look at a child, they're not pondering or thinking. They've got their eyes wide open, right? And they're looking at the world with so much curiosity. And we've diverted from that. We've gone away from that. And, we've gone away from our core because we've been conditioned to be a mental society, a society that's on the go, 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 be more, excess more, and, just be in this very much immersed in this hypnosis of this material, world. And that's not a bad thing. But if you're not truly connected, that could lead to a lot of, dangers and issues. And so what I would say is, embrace being a child, laugh, even laughter, as funny as that sounds, no pun intended. There's a club actually in India that meets almost like every day. You could look it up on YouTube. It's called the Laughing Club of India. And they just meet and they holler and laugh at the top of the lungs as much as they can. Because as we said before, in our society, we're very much conditioned with our own states based off of how we do and what we perform and how we're measuring up to in the outside world. But these are people on the lowest socioeconomic totem pole, on the planet, arguably. But they're smiling, they're laughing. The mathematical equation to me, is really we are existential existence, beings. We don't have to define ourselves by what's in front of us. And if we do, we're going to be a prisoner to that. And so, laughing is a great exercise. I implement that with a lot of my groups. Laughing hysterically. Not only is it great for physiological basis and all the different biochemicals that it has to your brain, allowing your organs to kind of squeeze out, but it really allows you to understand that happiness has nothing to do with what is in front of you. It really doesn't. It's got very little to do with it. It's really what living your life from the inside out versus outside in that will define your emotional degrees of freedom that you have in your life. So,
That's amazing. And I think I love laughing. And I also think for me, what came up is like, hey, that would be fun to do with my girlfriend to remind ourselves like that we can generate that at any time. And we don't need a reason to laugh. It's just sit down with the intention to laugh. And like just do it and practice it because like we don't need an external stimulus to cause us to laugh. We can generate laughter, and it's almost like a weird thought that someone would just start generating laughter from within themselves, but it truly can. You just like laugh and it's contagious, and I just, for me, it's when I'm around people who I have a certain relationship with, there's a certain status quo, so to speak. it might be difficult to do new things like that, uncomfortable things, challenge that status quo, do something that we've never done before. But I think a healthy relationship is one where you can bring these ideas to the table and give it a shot together, or with a partner, with a friend, with a girlfriend, significant other, whatever it might be, and you can bring these new ideas to the table and give it a shot and see what happens. Like, what's the worst that could happen? It's weird, it's uncomfortable. Hey, you just gave it a shot.
Yeah, and you have to look at, where are most people? Most people think standing like this is pretty normal, with your shoulders very tense, your neck tense, your heart racing. That's become the new normal. Right?
Yeah.
But people trying to change that or shift that, they're crazy. They're all of a sudden nuts. It makes no sense. But that's our world. We're very used to sitting and standing like this and being boxed in and talking the game, and that's what we've constructed. It doesn't have to be. I mean, we have the canvas in our hand. The paintbrush in our hand and the canvas in front of us. We can make it to how we want to be. And again, that's what about being flow is. And I think we can learn a lot from stigmatized populations, such as children, who are looked at, in such a wrong way. I think we could learn a lot from the two polarities of the age demographics of senior citizens who have had the most worldly experiences, and children who are really the most spiritual aware. They're not as conditioned or programmed, and so their awareness is very much pure, but they don't condition their own state off of the outside forces. And really, when you think about it, we come from an unconditional love. That's to me what I at least connected to my near-death experience, which is the highest greatest sensation. And that's at the core of who we are. We're a drop in the ocean. The ocean is unconditional love. We're a drop of that. And so many of us are so frustrated because we're going against our philo. We're conditioning off of who we are, based off of what society tells us, rather than sticking into our truth that we are enough, we are whole, we are so much more than we could ever imagine, but we don't listen to that tune enough. That tune has been bogged down by so many other voices that have gone and interfered with that. And so I think if there's a greatest lesson to understand, is spiritual evolution is not the process of accumulation. It's a process of reduction and getting true to your core. It's removing and peeling off of all those layers, to get back to your child self, basically. If you ask me, that's your natural self. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Jacob, this is off the charts awesome, out of this universe epic, and I know our audience wants to keep growing with you, take their next steps on the journey with you. We're going to tell them how they can do that in just a second, and then after that we're also going to do the minute to win it, where you can either recap what we've already talked about, you can share something new that comes from your heart, but you're going to have about a minute to just share your enthusiasm, your empowerment, and your encouragement for our awesome listeners, and specifically say the one listener who's listening who really needs to hear that message. And before that, let's talk about how people can continue their journey with you, because this is awesome, dude. How do they stay connected?
Thank you. First of all, I don't know how you do the 12-hour marathon. You're amazing. I'm like, when you have me to have a minute, I'm like, Chris, you got an energy drink for me? I need to get in. You're amazing. Your energy is incredible. You're a special guy. Not everyone could do that. You got a real drive and a real passion. I'm so fortunate to be a part of this. But if anyone is interested in touching base with me and having any inquiries, questions, or interested in having a past life regression session, or information about Reiki, or having a guided meditation session or mindfulness session, you can reach me on my website at www.jacoblcooper.com. That's it should be on the bottom link. But also you can find me in all places at Facebook. That's primarily where I use a lot of my marketing. So I have my own personal, but as well as professional page, so people could follow upcoming events. I know I'm going to be down in Virginia next week presenting at a conference in Philly, and then I have a program up in Ontario, Canada at a liberal arts college coming up in the fall. So some exciting programs. So I'd love to stay in touch with whoever's interested and just be a part of your journey. Yeah.
Well, we got Jessica Suzanne Dugas, who's out there in the audience. She was on the 12-hour marathon a couple weeks ago. She's an amazing human being, amazing guest, and she also has her own show called The Breakthrough. Jacob, definitely recommending you to go on that show. I think you would be an amazing guest for her show as well. So Jessica and Jacob, y'all are connecting. I'm going to make it happen. Just so you know.
Thank you. Gotta love the modern day, man. It's instantaneous connections. That's great. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. So, Jacob, let's dive into the minute to win it, man. Let's give it to this person who needs to hear this message.
Yes, so for those of you who haven't, tuned in, for those of you who might be tuning right now, my, just to recap it, you are an infinite, being. You are timeless. You are limitless. Um, I'm a near-death experiencer and I had that experience, but I don't necessarily need to believe that you need to have that experience. And so through really the process of reduction and really burning away of a lot of the excess that we've inherited and a lot of the information that really doesn't ring true to who you are. You could really come true more to to your essence. So just remember that you're an infinite, being, and you're timeless. And once again, we don't die. We go on forever. We just merely change shape and change form, and we have a rebirthing period. And it's a very exciting period. It's nothing to be worried about or concerned, but really this moment will shift your eternity. And so that's my message for all viewers. And I thank you all for tuning in here. It's a pleasure to be a part of your journeys. So
Yes.
thank you. Yeah.
Jacob, I love you, man. Thank you so much for being here. So
Thank
much gratitude and appreciation for you and for what you're creating in the world and all the people's lives you're touching. And I know this is just the beginning for both of us. We are diving in and we're expanding a lot. So I appreciate you being here, man. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Thank you. My pleasure.
You're welcome. We'll see you soon. Okay, Jacob?
Thank you, Chris. Thank you.